Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the small interrogation room, a stark contrast to the weight that hung in the air. It was here that the police had begun to piece together an increasingly chilling narrative that involved a seemingly ordinary life shattered by violence. Just outside, the bustling city of Millridge continued its daily routine. Street vendors hawked their goods. Couples strolled hand in hand, oblivious to the darkness that threatened to envelop their community. Inside, Detective Sarah Hunt leaned forward, her eyes narrowing on the suspect slumped in the chair opposite her. Mark Branson, a 35-year-old mechanic, had been brought in for questioning early that morning, after the lifeless body of his wife was discovered in their home. As the clock ticked on the wall, marking stolen moments filled with breathless anticipation, Mark's hands fidgeted in his lap, beads of perspiration forming along his forehead. In the light of day, he appeared unremarkably a man with worn jeans and a faded t-shirt, but beneath the surface lay secrets that whispered of anger and desperation. "I just don't understand how this happened," he stammered, his voice cracking. The vulnerability seemed genuine, but the detective's instincts told her otherwise. Sarah had seen this too often, and yet, amidst the chaos, she refused to jump to conclusions, knowing that every piece of evidence needed its place in the puzzle of this tragic case. As she prepared to dive deeper and sift through the layers of fear and potential deception, a single thought lingered in her mind. In a world where appearances could deceive, truth often lay buried beneath a cloak of familiarity. The victim. Lily Branson had always been described as a light in the lives of those who knew her. At 32, her bright smile and infectious laughter could easily draw in strangers. She had a way of finding beauty in the mundane, and her passion for life translated into the vibrant energy she infused into her work at the local bakery. That Thursday morning began like any other. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the cozy kitchen. Lily was singing softly to herself as she prepared a day's batch of pastries. The fragrant aroma of cinnamon and vanilla wafting through the cabinet. Regular customers often lingered just a little longer, sipping their coffee while basking in her warmth. It was a sanctuary for many, a place to escape for even just a few moments. But the serenity of the morning was soon shattered. And sometime after she closed that afternoon, her world began to unravel. Caught in the web of marital struggles, Lily had confided in her closest friend about the growing tension at home. She had mentioned arguments recently escalating, feelings of entrapment creeping in, a truth that echoed like a death knell for those who truly cared for her. When the sun dipped low and the shadows deepened, Lily's lifeless body was discovered sprawled across their living room floor. The scene painted a haunting picture. A broken vase lay shattered nearby, a testament to a struggle that had gone unnoticed by their neighbors. The police arrived to find the scent of jasmine lingering in the air, mingling with the harshness of reality. As Detective Hunt sifted through the details, she began constructing a mental portrait of Lily, not just as a victim, but as a vibrant woman whose life had been dimmed far too soon. Friends painted an image of a dedicated wife, yearning for a future bright with promise, now cut short in an unfathomable moment of violence. Each tear shed in honor of her memory only amplified the weight of the sorrow that enveloped those left behind. The crime scene, the muted crunch of police boots against the hardwood floor, echoed in the otherwise silent house, each step reverberating with the gravity of the moment. Detective Sarah Hunt led the way, her flashlight illuminating areas of the living room shrouded in shadow. The air hung heavy with the metallic scent of blood, a stark reminder of the violence that had unfolded mere hours before. As she entered the scene, Sarah's gaze swept over the pristine layout of the room, now marred by chaos. The overturned coffee table lay at an odd angle, a faint trail of sticky syrup leading to where Lily's body had been discovered. It was both unsettling and tragic, stark contrast of the once inviting space, now blighted by the grim finality of death. With careful precision, the forensic team began to document every detail. Their movements, methodical and deliberate. Marked evidence tags dotted the floor like breadcrumbs, guiding the investigation deeper into the mystery. A shattered vase lay in pieces, its floral contents scattered like confetti across the carpet. Fragments of broken porcelain glinted in the light, but it was the darker stains that drew Sarah's attention. Was there a struggle? She asked one of the forensic technicians, her voice steady, but edged with urgency. Possibly, he replied, lifting the vase with gloved hands. We'll have to analyze these prints further, but it seems likely that it was thrown during an altercation. Images of a violent confrontation formed in Sarah's mind, the heated words, the fear that spiraled out of control. What had prompted such rage? She stood over the body, her heart heavy. Lily's face, once bright with vitality, was now frozen in an expression that seemed to plead for justice. As it turned to dusk, the remnants of Lily's life lay scattered around her like a puzzle, pieces yearning to be reunited with the truth that danced just out of reach. As the sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating the crime scene with a hauntingly beautiful glow, Sarah felt the weight of her responsibility settle upon her shoulders. She was determined to uncover not just what happened, but why this vibrant woman had met such a cruel fate. The early investigation. The following morning, Sarah sat at her cluttered desk, the remnants of the previous day's work surrounding her like a metal fortress guarding a secret. Crime scene photographs were spread across the surface, each one telling its own silent story. She picked up a picture of Lily, alive and radiant, and her heart twisted in response. It was a reminder of what was lost to life that had held such potential. Detective Sam Rivera, her partner, entered the room, shaking off the chill of the early autumn air. "What have we got?" he asked, shuffling paperwork in his hands. "Preliminary reports from the crime scene," Sarah replied, gesturing toward the scattered images. "We might have something with the vase prints are still being analyzed. Witness interviews are underway as well, but so far, nothing concrete." "Let's start with the obvious. Her husband." Mark protested his innocence, Sam mused, leaning in closer. "But can we take that at face value?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Sarah said, her brow furrowing. Mark's earlier demeanor still lingered in her thoughts, the way his hands trembled, the glimmer of hesitation in his response. We would want to run a background check on, see if there's more than meets the eye. Yep. As she began drafting a list of witnesses, she couldn't shake the feeling that the truth lay buried beneath layers of emotion and unspoken fears. The couple's friends, colleagues at work, and even the neighbors' observations could shed light on their relationship dynamics. As interviews commenced, Sarah and Sam split their efforts. Sarah would delve deeper into Lily's life at the bakery, hoping to uncover any whispers of discontent or fear, while Sam headed to the neighborhood to chat with those who might have seen or heard anything unusual that fateful night. Each conversation became crucial threads in the fabric of the case. And as Sarah headed out into the cool morning air, she felt the nascent hope of unraveling a tragic love turned sour. The city of Millridge thrummed with life around her, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath its familiar facade. The dead ends. Days melted into nights as the investigation dragged on, and the once vibrant energy surrounding Sarah dwindled into a palpable frustration. With every interview conducted, every witness questioned, she felt the pieces of Lily's life slip further through her fingers. The trail that had promised clarity now led instead into a twisted maze of confusion and heartbreak. At the bakery, her scenes were replayed in hushed tones. Most customers remembered Lily fondly, but not much beyond that. The only comments to surface revealed a woman dedicated to her craft. A colleague mentioned she'd been late to work occasionally, but nothing that hinted at distress or conflict. In fact, Lily was praised for her positivity. Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Meanwhile, Sam had his own struggles, having canvassed the neighborhood without much fruit. A few neighbors reported hearing raised voices that night. Perhaps a quarrel. But no one had witnessed anything definitive. The voices faded into night, and along with them, the hope of finding a witness who could provide crucial evidence dwindled. Returning to her desk, Sarah rifled through stacks of paper with growing weariness, her eyes landing on the evidence from the crime scene. She picked up the blurred photo of the shattered vase again, wondering whether it had provided insights that eluded them. She needed a fresh perspective, a nudge in the right direction. Maybe we should dig into their financials, Sam suggested, leaning over her shoulder. Find out if there was any trouble looming beneath the surface, debt or stress. Sometimes money woes can lead to dire consequences. Sarah nodded, the idea sparking a flicker of hope. Let's do it. If there's something buried there, it might explain everything. But as they began analyzing bank statements and credit card bills, the pattern that emerged only deepened the mystery. Mark's spending habits appeared normal, regular bills and occasional indulgence, nothing that screamed desperation. The dead ends were exhausting, and with each piece of information that didn't fit, they were reminded how cruelly complicated human lives could be. The clock ticked mercilessly on the wall, each passing second, a reminder that Lily's murderer still roamed free in Millridge, hidden in plain sight, their secrets awaiting an unearthing. A break in the case. It was nearly a week since Lily's death, and the monotony of dead ends was beginning to sap Sarah's resolve. Tension filled the precinct as whispers of the case's stagnation circulated among officers. The weight of Lily's life hung heavy in the air, and each day without progress gnawed at Sarah's sense of duty. Then, in the early hours of Friday, an unexpected call pierced the quiet. The voice on the other end belonged to the Benton Avenue police, with news that sent ripples of energy through her weary heart. They had apprehended a suspected acquaintance of Mark Branson, who had been found acting suspiciously in a nearby alley. Detective Hunt and Sam quickly made their way to the small precinct. As they stepped through the door, the weight of anticipation pressed on them. The air felt electric, with the potential for answers. Within moments, they were seated across from a scruffy man named Eric Lawson, whose unkempt beard and wild eyes hinted at the chaotic life he led. Eric shifted nervously in his chair, sweat beading on his forehead as he looked up at the detectives. "I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt," he mumbled, his voice barely rising above a whisper. "Start from the beginning," Sarah urged, her curiosity piqued. "How do you know Mark Branson?" Eric inhaled deeply as he hesitated, feigning disinterest before diving into the tale. He revealed that he and Mark had been involved in a scheme to hustle a local bar. A plan thwarted when Mark acquired a debt he couldn't pay. As Eric recounted their last Meetinga confrontation, laced with anger and desperation, Sarah bolted upright in her chair. "He was upset about Lily," Eric confessed, his eyes darting around the room. "He said he couldn't take it anymore. That she was going to leave him." Tentative details coalesced into a clearer picture of a man pushed to the brink. As Eric spoke, the detectives meticulously noted how Mark's emotions might have spiraled into acts of violence. Sarah's mind raced. Could this be the thread they needed to unravel the truth? The possibility of turning the tide invigorated her, a long-sought glimpse of the light they had been pursuing. As the interview continued, shifts in Eric's story would reveal connections beyond what they had known. New threads ready to be pulled, and perhaps the answers they were desperately seeking. But beneath that flickering hope lingered cold resistance, the harrowing reality that behind every break in the case, the shadow of Lily's murder loomed large, and they were still chasing a phantom in a labyrinth of betrayal and regret. The suspect. The glow of morning light filtered through the precinct's windows as Sarah and Sam reviewed the notes from their encounter with Eric Lawson. The information had ignited the investigation with newfound vigor, but uncertainty loomed like a cloud. If Mark had felt suffocated by his marriage, it raised questions about his psyche and potential for violence. Detective Hunt's determination crystallized into focus. They needed to confront Marno, armed with the unsettling possibility. The suspicion that simmered beneath his seemingly innocent exterior. By the time they reached his house, the sun hung high, casting stark shadows across the driveway, like an ominous specter. Nursing the lid dangling between his fingers as he peered distractedly out the window. The moment he saw the familiar officers, his demeanor shifted. "Detectives," Mark greeted them, his voice strained, a hint of wariness creeping in. "Have you found something? Can we come in?" Sarah asked, her tone even but assertive. He nodded, eyes darting nervously as he led them into the cramped living space that no longer felt like home. Once seated, Mark avoided their eyes, his hands clenching and unclenching as he braced himself for the onslaught of questions. "Eric Lawson was brought in last night," Sam began, cutting straight to the point. "He claims you were involved in some scheme to gather a hustling gig that went south." Mark's face drained of color. "What do you mean?" he stammered, forcing his voice to remain steady. "I don't know what he's talking about. We didn't even hang out." "That's not what he said," Sarah countered, her gaze unyielding. "He mentioned you were upset with Lily, that you believed she was going to leave you. Is that true?" As Mark's eyes flickered with anger, desperation emerged, jaw tightening. We had arguments, sure. But no, sir. I would. Well, his voice broke, betraying a mixture of grief and guilt that tangled in the air. You're right about the arguments, Mark, Sarah pressed. But they don't occur in a vacuum. That pressure, if left unchecked, can make people do unthinkable things. The room pulsed with tension as silence enveloped them. Mark's gaze fell to his hands, frustration simmering behind his eyes. At this moment, Sarah understood he was teetering on the edge of something in reality, and the facade of innocence he had constructed threatened to unravel. Yet, there was more to uncover. Mark wasn't just on the defensive. He was terrified. As layers of him were peeled back, Sarah sensed that not only was he capable of darkness, but he was also hiding something far deeper, something beyond anger that could lead to tragedy, begging to be unearthed. With renewed conviction, Sarah knew they were on the precipice of their next breakthrough. All it would take was one push, a crack in the mask he wore, to uncover the truth behind Lily's untimely death. The trial. The courtroom was a sea of muted colors and hushed whispers, the anticipation hanging thick in the air as the trial of Mark Branson began. Sarah sat in the gallery, her heart pounding with an intensity that matched the gravity of the proceedings. Practiced voices filled the room, weaving narratives that brushed against the truth while shrouding it in uncertainty. Defense attorney Rachel Simmons stood poised, her demeanor reminiscent of a well-rehearsed actor ready to deliver a gripping monologue. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice smooth and confident, "I urge you to hold fast to the presumption of innocence. My client lost the love of his life under tragic circumstances, and it is our duty to ensure that no shadows of doubt linger over his head." The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Mark Reed, presented Lily's vibrant life through a series of emotional testimonials from friends and family. Sarah listened intently as they painted a picture of a woman full of hope, cut short by a violent end. Soft gasps echoed when Lily's friend broke down on the stand, recalling the moments leading up to her last breath, emphasizing the deep emotional scars left behind. As the prosecution pushed forward, they introduced critical evidence from Eric Lawson's testimony, including admissions of Mark's threat-laden words that echoed in the halls of that courtroom, igniting firestorms in the hearts of those present. Mark Branson's growing anger reached a boiling point. Eric Lawson witnessed a confrontation that night, a husband driven by desperation, willing to go to lengths unimaginable, Reed declared, his voice rising with the intensity of his conviction. Mark sat silently, his expression a mask of sorrow and concentration. Sarah studied him closely, watching beneath the surface of his poised exterior. The flinch at every mention of Lily, the flicker of rage beneath his heavy eyelids. After days of testimonies, a forensic psychologist took the stand to explain the psychology of intimate partner violence. When love shifts to possessiveness, the expert explained, the emotional toll can turn catastrophic. Many victims appear bound to their partners out of sheer fear, often leaving them vulnerable to dangerous escalation. As the trial progressed, Mark's defense floundered against the weights of emotion and fact piled upon it. Rachel struggled to dismantle the narrative. The cracks in Mark's aloof demeanor grew wider, revealing the anxiety and cracks in his facade. In the final moments, Sarah could hardly contain her breath as the jury left to deliberate, a heavy silence enveloping the proceedings. Time crawled as anticipation grew into palpable dread. What would they decide about a life already entangled in tragedy? When the jurors finally returned, faces set with determination, it felt as though the world had paused. Count one. Guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict reverberated like a relentless drumbeat through the room, releasing a breath Sarah didn't realize she had been holding. In that moment, the echoes of Lily's laughter, silenced too soon, emerged from the shadows as the walls of justice, weeping, inked the pages of their human tragedy. With Mark Branson found guilty, the weight of evidence had become a necessary burden, lifted from the hearts of those who loved Lily. And though healing would take time, Sarah could now set her sights on the horizon, where hope glimmered like a peering dawn after a turbulent night. The aftermath. The weeks following the trial felt surreal, as if Millridge had been suspended in a state of reflection. The community gathered to mourn Lily in an outpouring of solidarity. The vibrant bakery now a hollow testament to her absence. Friends and family members created a memorial outside, where flowers softened the harsh edges of grief, and candles flickered against the night's darkness, each flame representing a life touched by Lily's warmth. Detective Sarah Hunt watched from a distance one afternoon, memories flooding her mind. Every interaction she'd had with Lily, every laugh shared with her co-workers felt raw and poignant. Behind her, Detective Sam Rivera leaned against the car, his arms crossed as he surveyed the scene. "You think this is going to help them heal?" he asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hope so," Sarah replied, her gaze lingering on the crowd. "It's important for them to know they're not alone in this. Grief can be isolating." As days bled into weeks, the rhythm of life began to return to Millridge. Yet shadows of the past loomed large. The bakery remained shuttered, its windows draped in dark cloth, haunted by memories of laughter that taunted those who passed by. Soon, Sarah would find herself immersed in a new case. But the impact of Lily's murder lingered, indelibly etched in the fabric of her being. Though justice had been served, unsettling unease gnawed at Sarah. Was there truly closure for those left behind? The faces of friends and family haunted her thoughts, a reminder that peace was a fragile illusion against a backdrop of violence. She revisited the story often, the signs they'd missed, the whispers of doubt. It fueled her resolve to understand the darker corners of human behavior. Lily's memorial service came next, drawing a large gathering. Friends spoke fondly of the laughter they shared, and the beauty she created in both her art and her daily interactions. As Sarah listened to the stories, she was struck by how many lives had been altered by one man's moment of despair. More than a simple crime of passion, this was a tragedy of intertwined souls. That evening, Sarah found herself wandering through the city. The sun setting behind the skyline, casting the world in a warm, golden hue. Her heart weighed heavy with questions, lingering regrets that would never fully resolve. But in the depths of her sorrow, she felt a flicker of determination ignite anew. Next time, she whispered to herself, "I'll do better." She understood the complexity of her role, not just a seeker of justice, but a guardian of stories buried beneath the surface. As the stars began to twinkle above, Sarah resolved to turn her grief into action. No more silence, she would work diligently to to ensure that other lives would not fall victim to the invisible webs of fear and despair woven in darkness. The fight for Lily's memory had just begun, and so too would her unwavering commitment to those still navigating the shadows. Reflection. Months had slipped by since the trial, but the echoes of Lily's story still vibrated through Sarah's life, reverberating reminders of loss, resilience, and the complexities of human emotion. Each day she faced a renewed commitment not just to her career as a detective, but to those whose voices had been silenced. One crisp autumn afternoon, while walking through Millridge, she paused in front of the bakery, its doors still sealed, its heart forever still. The street bustled with life. Yet there remained a poignant absence felt by everyone who shared in Lily's light. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, and tried to picture Lily's smile, the warmth she brought to each interaction. As she resumed her walk, her mind drifted back to Eric Lawson, the witness who had inadvertently become a catalyst for uncovering the truth. Their lives spun in circles of complexity, interwoven by tragedy and circumstance. The questions around guilt and innocence weighed heavily upon her heart, challenging her perceptions of right and wrong. She often reflected on Mark Branson, the man whose decisions spiraled into darkness, revealing the fragility of love when tainted by desperation. How an idyllic couple could disintegrate into the chaos of fear and rage left ripples that reached far beyond the moment of violence. In those reflections, Sarah found purpose. She sought to engage with the community, educating them about domestic violence, mental health, and the invisible struggles many faced. The message was clear. No one should feel alone in their pain, and awareness would light the way toward change. As her footsteps carried her away from the bakery, a fleeting sense of hope unfurled within her. Lily's legacy would be one of unyielding strength, a beacon for others destined to walk the harrowing paths of life. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah embraced the weight of her responsibility and the bittersweet power of reflecting upon what had been lost, ensuring it would guide her forward in her quest for justice.